one of the interesting things when we started to receive all of your acceptances to our invitations is the nature of the network that's assembled here today. And one of the things I'm sure you all look at is the network of your own organizations. But in the group today, we've got about 320 people. 131 of you have changed jobs in the last 12 months. 288 of you have actually updated your profile in the last year. And the average number of recommendations you guys are offering is about 3.6. And I thought, that seems like an interestingly low number for a bunch of us HR professionals who run our careers around getting to know people and building relationships. So I looked into this a little bit more and I found some interesting facts. We actually have a member here today, Kirsty, who's recommended the most number of people on LinkedIn of anyone in attendance today, 31. But more than that, we've got Lena here today, who has received 71 recommendations. Now, interestingly enough, you're probably asking, like I was, did Kirsty recommend Lena? No, but that's the chance for what could happen through the course of today that network can develop. You know, let's start talking about where we're going in the future of talent acquisition. And I can think back to about 25 years ago, which seems like just yesterday. No, it doesn't. It seems like decades ago. My first job in human resources, I was a recruiter. And those of you that have been in this field as long as I have, I wonder if you can remember what one of the big strategic advantages was against your competition for talent. Do you guys remember? It was trying to get the phone book of your competitor. Right? Do you remember that? I remember actually we had people on our payroll that we would go and their entire job was to phone people in the company and ask them, sorry, what's your name? What's your title? Okay, hang up, and they would start to get the phone tree lined up so you have an org chart. I mean, this is just, 2.5 decades ago. And when you think about today and think about where we are today, we have an unbelievable network to tap into. And we're right at the center of that at LinkedIn. Today we have over 150 million professionals in our network. We have members joining 2 per second. 2 more, 2 more. Joining the network and trying to take advantage and making all of your recruiting opportunities richer by the second. In the States, we have over 100% of employees from Fortune 500 companies who have memberships on LinkedIn. So this network and this opportunity that we have in front of us to really take advantage of data in ways that we've never had before is really going to be a big theme over the course of the afternoon. In preparation for the conference, one of the things that I did was I wanted to poll some of the leading experts in talent acquisition. We have them coming through our offices all the time, all over the world. And what we always want to ask them is, what are you seeing? What are the hottest trends? And so we asked them, what are the biggest trends that you see out there right now? And these are among the tops: utilizing social and professional networks. How do we better attract passive candidates? How do we really find A players? And so on, including things like what's happening in mobile seems to be increasingly a trend. But by far and away, the biggest theme that we heard from everybody about where talent acquisition is headed and what the big differentiators are that we need to be mindful of as we start growing our own organizations is that we're heading into a world of data-driven predictive recruiting. You've heard the term big data. I'm sure you probably, if you have a household like mine, you've got people, my wife is on Facebook every night. I'm on LinkedIn every night. We've got tweets coming in. We've got it's this huge wave of information out there from all kinds of sources. And our ability to harness that and leverage that is really going to be the defining differentiator for us in the world of recruiting. So let's talk a little bit about that. How many of you are familiar with this picture right here? Yeah. I was for about 14 hours, about 24 hours ago, flying in from San Francisco. And having been in this position many times, and maybe it's just because I'm curious, and maybe it's also because one of the features of LinkedIn that I love is like, who's viewed my profile? I'm always so curious. I'm always curious who's sitting next to me. And there was a gentleman sitting next to me on the flight out here, and at one point he got out his laptop, and I couldn't help, I don't know if you have the same problem I want to know, who is this person? What are they working on? They didn't have the screen block. I have a screen block on mine. But I was curious. And how powerful would it be if we're in a time where when we board a plane or we enter a restaurant or we go to a group gathering and we know a lot more than we know today? So let's come back to that in a second. Does anyone know what this is? This is the Australian Stock Exchange. Or Said another way, it's a bad day on the Australian Stock Exchange, judging by all the red in this picture, right? This is an index of companies that trade on the Australian Stock Exchange. I want you to imagine for a second a time in the near future, in the not too distant future, where how valuable would it be if we all had our own Australian talent exchange in each of our organizations, that we knew which companies built the best talent, had the most employees with the skills we're looking for, invest the most in training and developing their employees, that we have our own index of talent, beyond just the balance sheet and the financials, which we can find very easily on the web and on places like the Stock Exchange. Imagine that, because that is where the future is going. That each of us, and some of us to varying degrees in this room right now, because we have a lot of power users and a lot of folks that we're learning from that are informing our strategies at LinkedIn, but we also have a lot of you that are at the very beginning of this adventure. This is how we like to roll at LinkedIn. We like to take advantage of as much data as we can to try to inform as strategically as possible what the companies are where we're going to find the best talent. I think my hiring managers want me to be equipped with what companies we're looking at and why we're looking at them and who's got the best talent and what cultures are similar to ours that are going to likely lead to people being more successful here than other places. Said another way, we're heading towards a real efficiency of talent. And all of us are sitting in a great position for that. Does anyone know who this guy is? Anybody? Dane Swan. That's right. Is he any good at his profession? Yes, he is. And how do we know that? We know that because not only is he a multi-decorated, most valuable player of the Australian Football League, but we have statistics on his performance that show every element of his game. I know his height, I know his weight, I know how fast he runs, I know how strong he throws, I know how many assists he has, I know how many goals he scores, I know how resilient he is, how many minutes he plays per game. I know everything about him. Imagine for a second that you had those stats on everyone in your organization or everyone in your pipeline. Would that be valuable to your hiring managers to know how strong a performer someone is, how loyal an employee they are, how much they can contribute to your organization, how good their education background is, and how good a fit they are to your organization? This is the future. You are now going to be the general managers of your own professional sports team in your own organization. And this is all going to be contingent upon how well you leverage all the sources of data that are out there. Because unfortunately, we're not at a point yet where we have all that in one place. We're working towards it, and we've got lots of things that we can leverage today. But this is really powerful. So if we're in a universe where we have that kind of information, when we go into a restaurant in the future, or we board a flight, for example, this could have been the flight from Melbourne to Sydney. And we've got John and Scott and Bree. And they could have started collaborating and sharing stories and building their own network that might have been able to help them address something. You never know when you could be sitting next to someone. I've actually sat next to someone. Raise your hands if you sat next to someone on a plane that ultimately you hired. Does that happen? Now, ultimately you fired? No. We do have someone over there. That's right. You never know the opportunities. I've run into people that have actually, I've found other candidates through because they were interested in what I was doing and they were related to my universe in some really interesting way. Okay, I'm going to try to relate to all the recruiters in the audience who, like me, love finding talent. Is anyone familiar with the term the purple squirrel? Okay, I was worried that this might be a U.S. recruiter sort of insider thing, but you're going to have your own name for this. Purple pony? Okay. Purple squirrel is something that doesn't exist. How many of you can remember walking into a hiring manager's office and sitting down and hearing everything that the hiring manager wants? Yeah, I want the PhD from Cambridge, 6 languages, I want them to work for 6 multinationals, have traveled the world, have great recommendations from the best leaders on the planet, and I want them to be able to relocate without a big relocation expense. And you think to yourself, purple squirrel, right? Have we all been there? It's the impossible candidate. They don't exist. And you spend all this time fighting with the hiring manager. No, that doesn't exist. Well, yes, they do. Go find them. And you sort of have to go out and start hammering away and see if you can find them. And it's inefficient. Well, we're now past that. I want to share with you a story. It's a fun story about one of the situations we had at LinkedIn recently where we were trying to hire a data center operations manager. And one of my more colorful hiring executives in the company, this guy named David Hankey, he's the SVP of our operations, sat down my recruiting team and said, okay, let's be really clear. I've got a few minutes here and I want to tell you what I need, okay? I need someone who is within 50 miles of the company. They work in the internet industry. They're open to a new job, and they've specified that on their LinkedIn profile. They have 6 to 10 plus years of experience. They've been with their company 3 to 5 years or 6 to 10. I want someone who's loyal, who's not a job hopper per se. I want them to be in a public company. I want them to be able to speak English. And I'd like them to have some recommendations from people of substance. And my guys are like, ding, 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 purple squirrel, nobody out there. But because we have LinkedIn, because we have access to amazing tools, we went to the end of that meeting. We said, okay, David, we're going to come back to you in an hour and tell you how many candidates there are. I said, what? I'm busy in an hour. We said, are you serious about hiring this person? Because if you are, you need to make time in your schedule. He said, okay, sure, I'll make time on my schedule. So we showed up to David within an hour. Actually, it was about more like 30 minutes. And we said, guess what? There's 7 people on the planet that meet this spec. And guess what? We're happy to fill that requisition within 2 years. Does that time frame work for you? No, it doesn't. So let's get real and take the purple off that squirrel and get it to a reasonable place. So the first thing that we did was we said, okay, let's remove the recommendations. Because maybe people who are really diligent and hardworking, maybe they don't get out much. Maybe the data center manager's in the data center all the time, and he's not able to get recommendations. Okay, now we're up to 19 people. Okay, so now we're down from 2 years to maybe like a year, okay, or maybe a year and a half. Now let's remove years in position. We've all run into people in our careers who have gotten to really high places in really short periods of time. In fact, we probably all consider ourselves those people, right? Like we moved up the ladder really fast. Well, guess what? There's got to be someone else out there who's moving up fast, and so let's cut down the years of experience. We did, and we got it up to 71. Next thing that we did was we removed the type of company. Data is important. Managing data operations is really important, but it doesn't have to be in a public company. It could be in a different type of company. That gets us up to 82. But where we really got it down to a more reasonable size when we said, listen, let's remove the size of company. And that got us to 126 people. Now, we are armed with information to have intelligent, strategic discussions with the hiring manager to be able to get real specific about finding someone who's going to make sense. And as soon as we did this, David got all his lieutenants to join in the meeting and said, holy cow, this is going to be a really hard search. I didn't think it was so hard. And we got everyone on the same page and aligned around what was reasonable and what wasn't reasonable. And this is the power that we're coming into, that we all need to start thinking about how we're going to take advantages to get really specific and to make an even more strategic impact in all of our organizations. I can tell you story after story of folks just like you, and I'm sure some of you have experienced them in this room, where you have a hiring manager come, and we've had situations in Europe, for example. We had one recently. A big transportation company came and said to the head of recruiting, we need to build a hub in this city in Poland. We need you to hire about 200 people over the course of 6 months. We're going to build an operation there, and this is where we're going to run it. And the team, within an hour, came back and said, there's no way that's going to fly, because there's no engineers within 50 miles that are going to be able to fill the roles that you need. However, if you go up a little bit north, we found a town that has 3 universities, that has a high labor pool, has all the kinds of skills you need. Now, we're not talking about filling recs. We're not talking about filling open jobs. We're talking about making a difference in the business. And there is no better time for all of us to be in the positions that we're in, because now is the time that we can make a bigger impact than we've ever been able to. So when you think about how this is different than your own sourcing today, are you setting those specific targets with your hiring manager? Are you being really clear around the kinds of companies, that index that I talked about earlier? Do you have an index like that? So you don't waste time saying, well, have you tried that company? Have you looked over there? You get it all down up front, because then you can be a lot more targeted and a lot more efficient in finding the right person. So in closing, one of the things I'd like to share with you is a reiteration of something I'm sure all of you know. What's the single most important driver of long-term value creation within a company? It's all of us, okay? And the big difference that we're all going to make is how well we organize our teams and our resources to take advantage of data to be able to find the perfect candidate. Leveraging that big data, and a perfectly well-dressed candidate in this case. But that's the opportunity that we've got. How do we make signal, how do we find a signal in all that noise? How do we make sense of it? How do we take advantage of it? How do we elevate our impact? Because we are responsible for the biggest driver of value creation in our organizations. We are. Okay, so now, before I introduce our next speaker, we've got a lot of power users of LinkedIn in the room, but we also have a number of folks who've never used some of our solutions. So I'm going to give you a quick primer in 2 seconds of some of our solutions, because you're going to need to understand the language that some of these folks are going to be using as they go through their presentations. We've got a suite of products that we offer our hiring solutions customers. At the high end, you'll see there is we have sourcing and pipeline management. You're going to hear from Deep and a number of other folks around pipeline management today. But LinkedIn Recruiter, don't you love our marketing team? Hey, we're going to build a recruiter product. Let's call it Recruiter. Yes, let's take a week off because that was really intense, okay? Woo. So we've got a recruiter product, which essentially is a license to search the entire LinkedIn professional database, and even better, to be able to contact them and approach them about opportunities. On the bottom side, we have a whole bunch of really exciting products to offer, and these are the highlights of them in terms of jobs and branding. LinkedIn Jobs, you want to post your jobs? Great, that sounds boring actually. How about if we map every open job you have in your company and connect it to every employee you have, and now you've got every one of your employees becoming a recruiter. That's the power of LinkedIn Jobs. Okay, we've also got career pages so that you can brand yourself to the community the way you want to. We've got intelligent company pages. So if someone on LinkedIn who's an engineer goes to your homepage, guess what gets served up? An engineering experience, a video of one of your top engineers. And by the way, if diversity is important for you, guess what? It's going to be a diverse engineer who's going to be speaking about how great it is to work at your company. This is the power of social. We're able to harness that for huge leverage. Lastly, work with us. Some of you may not appreciate this, but if you are kind of a little vain like me and you like to say, who looked at my profile? I want to check it out. Guess what? Thousands of people are looking at your employees' profiles every day. Why not take advantage of that? They could be prospects. They could be people who are interested in working with your organizations. And that's what Work With Us every day is. This takes advantage of the thousands of page views that your employees get.